Interesting. This sounds like a really good idea. I've talked about this in the machine learning class and all the others. The problem with ChatGPT and Google Bard is that it's just learned on the whole internet and it just knows generic information, and you'd really like to train it on the specific information at your company. And so now what they have, I'm not sure this is a good idea, but what they'll do is they will take the existing model that's trained on the whole internet and then they'll add your data to it, training it further to be specializing on your data. Now, I don't know if you actually want all that other data involved, but that's what happens. So OpenAI will let you do this with either the older GPT 3.5 or the newer GPT 4. So that might be the best way to get it to do good work for a company. Anyway, so this you don't hear too often. This company got, I think, ransomwared, and they lost all their data, and they just told all their customers, your data's totally gone. We're not going to pay the ransom, and apparently they don't have any backups. This is the kind of thing most companies don't survive. I don't think very many customers are going to want to hear that, but anyway, that's pretty drastic. All right. And this is a new technique to escalate privileges on Windows, and I'm interested. There's a lab where I don't have administrator rights over the machines, and I'm looking into ways to escalate. This is a new way. This trick copies an access token. So it finds an internal Windows process with a high privilege token and copies it over, which is an old trick. But anyway, they have several techniques to do it here, and I'm going to look into this more and perhaps add it to the 126 class where we build things like that. I was unaware of this. This is pretty interesting stuff. The Chinese tourists spend a lot more money than other countries' tourists in America, but since the pandemic, they haven't been coming here, and on top of that, America has been losing a lot of money from tourism because we've become so extremely xenophobic and hostile. They say you have to apply for a visa like 500 days in advance just to be a tourist here from China and many other countries, and a lot of other countries don't harass people that much, so they are getting the tourists that we're not getting. So it's our sliding into xenophobia and closing the borders to a crazy extent is hurting us. This is an interesting story, and it might even be responsible from other problems. Microsoft, what happened is VeriSign, that makes certificates, did some bad mistakes several years ago. They issued some fake Microsoft certificates, I think, and so that everybody canceled them and they don't trust them anymore. So Microsoft decided to remove the VeriSign certificates from their trusted zone, but for some reason, now the problem is it's an intermediate certificate authority that they're trying to stop trusting, and that is used not only to sign websites, but also to sign software. And software signing is a real problem. Now, if you have a website and your certificate expires or something, you're expected to promptly put up a new certificate. But if you distribute software, it has a signing certificate from years ago, and there's no easy way to put on a new one. So you typically do not invalidate code signing certificates, and Microsoft did not when this all happened in like 2018 or 2019, but for some reason, yesterday, they finally disabled this intermediate certificate, so a bunch of signed software that has been running for years suddenly stops running, and took people a while to figure this out. So that's interesting and disturbing. And it calls into, it demonstrates something which is an important thing to know in the world of security, which is the security you get from HTTPS certificates is not as good as you think it is. And code signing certificates, you're ultimately trusting someone, and all the companies make mistakes. And the same thing's true of signed bootloaders. Your UEFI secure boot, it just has a series of checks, but those checks can be defeated. So the more you look into these apparently strong security measures, the more you find out they're not really that strong. All right, let's get rid of this garbage. So Japan is trying to decommission the Fukushima nuclear plant that had a huge meltdown and leaked a bunch of radioactive stuff, and now they're going to dump a bunch of radioactive water into the ocean. They claim it's low level and not anything to worry about, but of course that's what they would say. China is fed up and they banned all seafood from Japan because they regard this as contaminating the ocean. And so we'll see what comes of it all. There certainly was a ton of radioactive activity released when it failed a few years ago, and they really haven't found any proper way to, like, contain the results, the radioactive stuff left over. And this one is kind of hard to believe. This happened in China about 6 years ago. Stores started having a facial recognition tool which would evaluate to see if you are smiling enough before you go out into a store to, like, sell things. They would force you to pass the test to see if you're smiling enough. And now the Department of Homeland Security has a tool to detect sentiment and emotion. So it can scan somebody's face and use machine learning, supposedly, to tell you if you have a emotional state they don't like. And this is, of course, all trying to find dangerous people. And so the privacy groups are researching this, and they are complaining and saying that this is just pseudoscience and it's just going to lead to innocent people being harassed and arrested, which probably is true. So this looks like the latest scandal of this thing. It's almost all forms of facial recognition used by police end up this same way. They end up being a disaster, fingering the wrong people. None of it seems to be accurate enough to actually do any good, and they keep on arresting the wrong people and getting sued and such over it. Anyway, I think that's enough of this. I'm going to stop this one.